We cannot mix the things of God and the things of the adversary and just pretend it's okay. Before Constantine, for the longest time, until the sun god ways began to creep in, God's people kept the holidays mentioned in the Bible. In the spring, before there was Easter, there was Passover, unleavened bread, and first fruits. All we have to do is examine their writings. Don't believe it, that after the cross and before sun god influence, that believers still kept God's real holidays? Here's one example. At the end of the 2nd century, Victor, the Bishop of Rome, began to threaten other church leaders in an attempt to get them to abandon Passover completely in the favor of the Roman Easter celebration. Polycrates, the bishop of Ephesus, wrote this to Victor sometime between 130 and 196 CE. Then there is Polycarp, both bishop and martyr at Smyrna, and Thracias from Emunia, both bishop and martyr, who rests at Smyrna. Why should I speak of Sagaris, bishop and martyr, who rests at Laodicea, of the blessed Papirius, moreover, and of Melito, the eunuch, who performed all his actions under the influence of the Holy Spirit, and lies at Sardis, awaiting the visitation from heaven, when he shall rise again from the dead. These all kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month, in accordance with the gospel, without ever deviating from it, but keeping to the rule of faith. Moreover, I also, Polycrates, who am the least of you all, in accordance with the tradition of my relatives, some of whom I have succeeded, 7 of my relatives were bishops, and I am the 8th. And my relatives always observed the day when the people put away the leaven. Polycrates, bishop of Ephesus. Supposedly, according to Christian scholars, based on the writings of Irenaeus, Polycarp was a disciple of John, the apostle himself. Yet, he kept Passover and Ephesus. Paul, though, knew it would not last, for he told Ephesus the following. Acts chapter 20. I know that after my departure, fierce wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. And from among your own selves will arise men speaking twisted things to draw away the disciples after them. So from Polycarp to Polycrates, 8 generations of bishops all kept the Passover. If they kept the Passover, we can be rest assured that they kept God's other holidays as outlined in Leviticus 23 as well. That was, of course, until Rome made it illegal to follow God in Leviticus 23 and instituted their Christianized sun god days. Thus, the true biblical holidays were not abolished by our Messiah or by Paul. Those are all simply misunderstandings. For more information on that subject, consider watching our teaching series titled The Pauline Paradox. The Catholic Church readily admits that they are the ones, beginning with Constantine, that solidified through their law the abolishment of biblical holidays punishable by death. For example, it was the Catholic Church which made the law obliging us to keep Sunday holy. The Church made this law long after the Bible was written, hence said law is not in the Bible. The Catholic Church abolished not only the Sabbath, but all the other Jewish festivals. Also consider, since the 2nd century AD, there had been a divergence of opinion about the date for celebrating the Paschal Easter, anniversary of the Lord's Passion, death, burial, and resurrection. The most ancient practice appears to have been to observe the 14th, the Passover date, 15th, and the 16th day of the lunar month, regardless of the day of the Julian week. These dates might fall from year to year. The bishops of Rome, desirous of enhancing the observance of Sunday as a church festival, ruled that the annual celebration should always be held on the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday following the 14th day of the lunar month. This controversy lasted almost 2 centuries until the Emperor Constantine intervened in behalf of the Roman bishops and outlawed the other group. The problem is this. Despite all that occurred at the Reformation, there are still many traditions and doctrines that many hold on to that were simply the result of the unbiblical marriage between Christianity and Mithraism. Unfortunately, despite the thousands of Christian denominations that exist, there exists not one that has taken both feet out of the sun-god mixture that became known as the Roman Catholic Church. We would have historically done much better in the faith if we would just have simply considered and practiced the following. Ephesians chapter 5. And have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. We have no intent to offend, but the facts are clear, even from their very own writings. The Roman Catholic Church history is saturated with encouraging and successfully blending of sun-god religions contrary to Yahweh's instructions. There might not be a better example than the statue of Peter in Rome. Here is the famous statue of Peter in Rome. However, this statue was not always Peter. As crazy as it sounds, it was in fact originally the god of Jupiter. The statues of the gods from the pantheon are now found in the Vatican Museum with the exception of the great statue of Jupiter, which has been modified, retitled, and seated on a throne in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome as St. Peter. The historical church, consistent with adopting sun god ways and supposedly Christianizing them, has a sun god statue that they knowingly simply renamed Peter. What is even worse is that thousands of pilgrims kiss the foot of Jupiter while thinking it is a statue of Peter. You can actually see how the bronze has worn away from so many thousands bowing down and kissing the god of Jupiter statue's feet. Typical of sun god tradition, this statue in St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome also includes a solar disk above his head, and he's also showing a secret trident hand. Now watch how these symbols such as the hand gesture of a trident and a sun disk appear all over the works of the Catholic Church, directly from the influence of Babylon and pagan sun god worship. The trident of Babylon was placed in the hands of all pagan gods, the pitchfork. On the head of infant Jesus, his Hebrew name Yeshua, there is a trident symbol. This pagan symbol is from Babylon, as we saw evidence in the god of Jupiter statue. Here is another trident gesture and sun god disk. Again, and again, and again, more sun god disks. Here we have a happy sun disk party. Yeshua at the Transfiguration with not only a sun disk, but the Tammuz symbol and the disk as well. More sun disks and a Tammuz sign. Again, and again, and again. Even sun disks on animals. Here we have the Pope and a sun disk burst, and Yeshua as the sun god. Sun disks are simply everywhere in the 4th century Christianity and beyond. The sun god disk was a prominent symbol in sun god worship, and because Christianity blended sun worship with the faith, it should be of no surprise that the artist simply changed the names, but not the sun symbolism. Nearly all false religions are grounded in sun worship. Here, the Hindu god Surya has a clear depiction of the sun god disk. Here, we find a pagan goddess of fertility in the Vatican. Here is the sun god Mithra with a sun disk. Some Irish monks here. More sun god disks. Here's an interesting ancient depiction of sun gods. Recognize the symbol right here? It should look familiar. Here is Pope Benedict holding what is called a monstrance. It is used to display a round wafer of bread called the host, which is used in what is called Mass, Lord's Supper, or communion meal. The Catholic believes that this wafer of bread turns into the actual body of Christ when consecrated during the Mass. With no sense of shame, the Roman Catholic Church even admits monstrance to be a sunburst. During the Baroque period, it took on a rayed form of sun monstrance with a circular window surrounded by silver or gold frame with rays. The Dictionary of Liturgy. The priest sometimes holds up the sunburst monstrance with the host inside for the congregation to adore and venerate. Virtually any time the monstrance is viewed by the congregation, they kneel in submission. A Catholic cannot walk past this sun symbol without acknowledging it by kneeling and or making the sign of the cross with their hands. Inside the glass enclosure is a crescent, upon which the round wafer god host is placed, called a lunette or a luna, which means moon. Note the similarity to the symbol of Baal, a cross within a circle. Even the world's largest pine cone sculpture is in the grounds of the Vatican. In Babylon, the pine cone described the fertility and regeneration power of Tammuz. The pine cone staff in Egypt was a symbol of the sun god Osiris. The Vatican, or St. Peter's Basilica, is truly an impressive building. It is the largest church in the world. Vatican means hill of divination, and basilica has its root meaning in the magical word basilisk. The solar wheel was another type of Baal worship. When Israel turned to Baal, they made chariots dedicated to the sun god, which they thought traveled across the sky in a great chariot. 2 Kings 23. And he took the horses that the kings of Judah had given to the sun, at the entering of the house of Yahweh, by the chamber of Nathan-Melech, the chamberlain, which was in the suburbs, and burned the chariots of the sun with fire. All through the Vatican, there are images and symbols of the sun wheel, but the biggest sun wheel in the world is right in St. Peter's Square. It is also known as the occult 8-wheel path of enlightenment by pagans or Wiccans today. St. Peter also faces due east. If you look at the center of the wheel, you see that there is an obelisk in the center, and at the center of the huge 8-point sun wheel is a smaller 4-pointed sun wheel, the same symbol as found on the altar stone in the temple of Baal in Hatzor. In Babylonian history, Nimrod was killed and his body was cut into pieces. His wife, Semiramis, collected all the parts except for one, his reproductive organ. Legend says that when the fish ate it, hence when Nimrod was reborn, he was part man and part fish, also known as Dagon. In Egyptian history, Nimrod was called Osiris, and the obelisk represents the male phallus of Osiris. When the Roman ancient empire fell, the Roman Catholic Church began to increase its power and influence until it gained total power, both spiritually and politically. Soon, the Vatican purchased one of Egypt's ancient obelisks. The obelisk from Egypt was brought to Rome in 37 AD. It came from Heliopolis, Egypt, where it had been built by Pharaoh Menkaure in 1835 BC in honor of the sun. It is also a sundial. Its shadows mark noon over the signs of the zodiac in the white marble discs in the paving of the square. The obelisk rests upon 4 couchant lions, each with 2 bodies whose tails intertwine, where they are placed in St. Peter's Basilica. Therefore, whenever the Pope holds audience to vast crowds within the basilica, the Pope is facing the obelisk. Perhaps Exodus 34 comes to mind. Instead of purchasing obelisks, Yahweh wants them destroyed. Exodus 34. But you shall destroy their altars, dash in pieces their pillars, obelisks, images, and cut down their Asherim, symbols of the goddess Asherah. The fish symbol has been used for millennia worldwide as a religious symbol associated with the pagan Great Mother Goddess. Fish were originally worshipped as a symbol of Nimrod, because the fish survived Noah's flood, the sun god who after being killed was reborn in the womb of his wife Semiramis. Her womb represented the waters of the great deep. Nimrod then became the fish god, being reborn in these waters. Here you will see a drawing of the pagan goddess with the fish head of Dagon on her head, and another picture, this time with Isis crowned with a fish on her head. She was known as Isis incarnate, the great fish of the abyss. The old priest of Dagon wore a particular type of headdress, and the Catholic religion uses this exact same design on their papal headdress. According to Egyptian mythology, when the judges found Osiris, Nimrod, guilty of corrupting the religion of Adam and cut up his body, they threw the parts into the Nile. It was said that a fish ate one of these chunks, his reproductive organ, and became transformed. Later, Isis, or Semiramis, was fishing along the riverbank when she fished up a half-man, half-fish. This sea creature was Dagon, the reincarnated Nimrod. And Dagon is a representation of Nimrod of ancient Babylon resurrected out of the ocean depths as half-man, half-fish. Dagon is the diminutive of Dag and signifies fish. The Babylonians believed that a being, part man and part fish, emerged from the Erythraean Sea and appeared in Babylonia in the early days of its history. Representations of this fish god have been found among the sculptures of Nineveh. The Philistine Dagon was of a similar character. Manners and Customs of the Bible by James Freeman. In Babylon there was Oannes, a fish god who imparted great knowledge to the people. He taught them how to build cities. Zephaniah chapter 1. On that day I will punish those who worship Dagon. On that day, says Yahweh, a cry will be heard at the fish gate. I will punish those who are satisfied with themselves, who think, the Lord won't help us or punish us. The Lord's day of judging is coming soon. It is near and coming fast. The cry will be very sad on the day of the Lord. Even soldiers will cry. Now that we have a fairly introductory understanding of Babylonian history becoming part of the Christian faith, let's look at some of the sun god traditions that Christianity adopted as a result. Let's start with Santa Claus. The story begins in the northern regions of Europe, where the supreme god Odin, also known as Woden among the German tribes, reigned. He still lives among us as Wednesday, which is actually Woden's Day. Odin, or Woden, was the god of wisdom, magic, and the occult knowledge, runes, poetry, and war. His name means the inspired one. Like a shaman, he could travel in other worlds to gather more insight, while his 2 black ravens, Hugin, thought, and Munin, memory, kept him informed about the news in the world. Odin was depicted as a tall, old man with a white beard and wearing a cloak. He rode the skies and the seas on his fast white horse with its 8 legs, while carrying his never-missing spear in his hand. He had one eye, for he had offered the other eye in exchange for gathering wisdom at the well of the head of Mimar, and with that he became a shapeshifter, able of seeing in the outward world with his normal eye, and understanding the inward worlds with his black, removed eye. He was very beloved among his friends and followers who felt happy and energized in his surroundings. His enemies, however, he could paralyze or kill with his sight. Odin trained many men and women as warriors for the final battle against the forces of destruction in the underworld. His fearless warriors often painted their bodies black and fought in the middle of the night. Odin is a mythical representation of goodness with his wisdom, white beard, and white horse. His helpers are black ravens and black spiritual warriors. So now we have a wise, good man performing miracles with a white horse riding the skies, a white beard, a cloak, a spear, and black advisors or informers or helpers, and he is also the god of poetry. Next we go to the Roman Empire, where in December the pagan Saturnalia was celebrated. Big feast with a lot of merrymaking, dancing, gambling, sensuality, and exchange of gifts. This festival was meant to celebrate the return of the sun on the shortest days of the year and to counteract the depression due to lack of sunlight. Time goes by. Christianity begins merging and blending with these religions. In the 4th century, in Myra, Turkey, a Christian bishop named Nicholas lived with a great reputation for goodness, benevolence, and performing miracles for the poor and unhappy. In this depiction of him, notice the sun god disc around his head and the trident symbol with his hand. This is the same exact disturbing hand gesture we saw earlier with the god of Jupiter statue, also with its own sun disk image. Legend has it that he miraculously supplied gold to 3 girls as marriage dowries so they did not have to become prostitutes, and he brought 3 children back to life who had been chopped up by a butcher. It is not difficult to understand that during the poverty of the Middle Ages, the bishop became extremely popular as St. Nicholas in all parts of Europe. His feast day, it was said to be his birthday, which was supposedly December 5th or 6th, no one really knows. There is no historical evidence, however, for the true existence of this saint. So now we see a benevolent, miracle-performing bishop with a white dress and a red cloak. After the Reformation, St. Nicholas became forgotten in all the Protestant countries of Europe, except for Holland. There he became Sinterklaas, a kind and wise old man with a white beard, white dress, and red cloak. He was riding the skies and roofs of the houses on his white horse, accompanied by his blackjacks. Sinterklaas will visit you on his birthday, December 5th and 6th, and donate gifts. His blackjacks have miraculously gathered information about your behavior during the last year. If you are good, you'll now be rewarded with presents. If you are bad, you'll be punished by the blackjacks, who will beat you with their rods, or even worse, put you in a big bag and take you to Spain, said to be the residence of Sinterklaas. On the other hand, if you do behave nice, you'll be rewarded with sweets and gifts accompanied by humoristic poems that will give you insight into your weaknesses. Here is actually some video depicting Sinterklaas.
Wat is er aan de hand? Ja, ze zijn hier. Misschien moet Sinterklaas daar even zitten, of niet op de stoel. Ja, dat kan ook.
Here the mix becomes clear between Odin, the good magician god, and the miracles of the benevolent Sinterklaas. They both ride a white horse in the skies, wear a white beard and a cloak and a spear. They both have black helpers. They try to support goodness and dispel evil through knowledge. And remember the poetry part? And then it is all blended with Roman influences, which shows itself in a December feast with gaiety and presents.